Arduino or Raspberry Pi? Which one should you buy? When it comes to choosing between buying a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, what are the important things that you should consider before buying? If you have not used any of these, it could be a hard decision to make. Without enough information, it would be hard to make a good choice. There are a number of things that you need to consider before making a choice. For the purpose of this video, I will discuss the Arduino 3R3, Arduino Uno, and the Raspberry Pi 2, because these are the boards that are popular at this present moment. So what is a Raspberry Pi? A Raspberry Pi is a microprocessor, a general purpose computer that runs Linux or Windows 10 or other select operating system. Because it has an operating system, it is capable of running multiple programs at the same time. You can use it as a media streamer, as a video game emulator without a problem at all. In fact, a Raspberry Pi was created primarily to serve as a low-cost computer to help with teaching computer basics, particularly Python programming, to school kids. In fact, the word Pi is said to have been taken from the PY of Python. Because it comes in with built-in internet, you can use it in a network and can easily connect to the internet. It also has a USB outlet so that you can use with a Wi-Fi adapter. Because it has an operating system, you have to properly power it up and power it down. Otherwise, the operating system that is in this and other installed applications will be corrupted. Unlike with an Arduino, you have to switch it on and off without risking any damage at all. You can actually cut power to this and repower it without damaging anything, and you don't have to follow any procedure. Once an Arduino is powered up, it will immediately start running the last program it was running when it was switched off. And so what is an Arduino? An Arduino is a microprocessor which basically performs a fraction of the functions that the Raspberry Pi can. And what an Arduino does not have an operating system and can only run one program at a time over and over again. The purpose of an Arduino is to interface with sensors and other electronic devices. In other words, its main purpose is to connect to and control electronics. So an Arduino is great for hardware projects in which you simply want things to respond to various readings and other manual inputs. Because an Arduino does not come with an operating system, it is not internet or network ready. The good thing about it is that it has no operating system, and it means that there is no powering up or down sequence that is needed, and there is no need for you to worry about the turning off and on of the Arduino. Right. The Arduinos are also designed to accept shields that you can plug on top so that you can add more functionality or other hardware. Now let's compare the physical properties of an Arduino versus a Raspberry Pi. According to this diagram that I'm going through with you, an Arduino does not have an operating system, whereas the Raspberry Pi runs Linux and other elect operating systems. And the processor for an Arduino, it runs in 80 Mega 328, whereas the Raspberry Pi has got an ARM version 7 quad-core. And the register width for an Arduino is 8 bits, whereas the Raspberry Pi comes with 32 bits. The clock speed on Arduino is just a fraction of what we have for Raspberry Pi at 16 MHz versus 900 MHz for a Raspberry Pi 2. In terms of the power, the Raspberry Pi comes with 175 millivolts compared to the Raspberry Pi at 700, which means the Arduino will consume less power if you are comparing it to Raspberry Pi. The input and output current max, Arduino has 40 milliamps, whereas the Raspberry Pi comes with a max of 16 milliamps. So you are going to be very careful when you are in the amount of current you are going to pass through a Raspberry Pi, otherwise you are going to damage it. And on-board network, Arduino does not have an on-board network connections at all, whereas the Raspberry Pi comes with the best internet 10/100. multitasking, because an Arduino does not have an operating system, it cannot multitask. It runs one program at a time, whereas the Raspberry Pi is very good and ideal for multitasking. In terms of the integrated development environment, Arduino runs the Arduino IDE, whereas Raspberry Pi will use Scratch, Hydro, and any other with Linux support. The flash for Arduino is at 34 kilobytes, whereas the Raspberry Pi can get to 16 gig using an SD. In terms of the cost, if you buy the original Arduino, it will cost you around about $20 compared to $35 for Raspberry Pi. But for an Arduino, you can get off market or on eBay something that is even less than $10, but it will be a clone. Then when we look at the RAM, we have the Arduino comes on with 2K in terms of memory, and then the Raspberry Pi has got 1 gig DDR2. One other thing that the Raspberry Pi has an advantage over Arduino is that it comes with an HDMI for video out, whereas the Arduino does not have it. And the Raspberry Pi, again, it also has a camera interface socket, which the Arduino does not have. So now the question would be, so do we choose the Raspberry Pi over Arduino because of the advantages that we have seen? Let's go through them one by one. Right, let's see. The first thing that we want to look at is writing the codes onto these two processors. Right. When you are working with the Raspberry Pi, when you write your code, you have to write it within the Raspberry Pi operating system. And if you look at the Arduino, what you have to do is you have to download the Arduino IDE onto your computer. Then you write your code, or sketch as we call it, before you can upload it onto your Arduino. The code that you upload onto the Arduino runs on the chip, on this chip on here, but the disadvantage is there is no interpreter or no operating system or firmware to talk about. Just by looking at the diagram above that we just went through, you might think that Raspberry Pi is the best choice. But which one is better? My answer would be, it depends on the project being done. For controlling and capturing data from sensors, changing values, for motors and other devices like LCDs, I would recommend using a microcontroller. So using an Arduino in this particular case would be an advantage. An Arduino also has lower power requirements and upkeep, and does not need much hardware upgrade in order to interface with other devices. But where you need a computer with a lower power consumption and connection to external display, where you will need to read or write data, or to view media or of any kind, such as cameras, or do complex calculations using a graphic interface, then you might want to use a microprocessor as your best choice. And that's where you want to use a Raspberry Pi, which will have a great advantage. The other difference between these two boards are as follows. Because Raspberry Pi is a powerful hardware, it needs a continuous supply of 5 volts, and it is difficult to run using batteries, whereas with an Arduino, which has a lower demand for power, it can be powered using batteries. Although both are cheaper than most microprocessors and controllers, an Arduino is cheaper than a Raspberry Pi. And also, because it's powerful, a Raspberry Pi can be converted actually to a web server, to a ERP server, a printer server, and a data server, which you cannot do with an Arduino. The other thing is, the Raspberry Pi, if you look at the diagram, is 40 times faster than an Arduino and does not need external hardware for most computer functions. But then the disadvantage over there is that the Raspberry Pi will need more work, and when you try to add other hardware so that they can perform the same functions that an Arduino can perform. When it comes to the GPIO, the general purpose input and output pins, the Raspberry Pi comes with 40 pins compared to the 20 pins that are found on the Arduino. In terms of storage, the Arduino is 34 kilobytes compared to 1 gig on the Raspberry Pi. And also the advantage on the Raspberry Pi is it has a slot for an SD card that can actually improve the memory. The other thing that we also have is the Arduino comes with just one USB port compared to the Raspberry Pi that has got 4 USB ports, including an HDMI, which is not available for an Arduino. But one thing that is an advantage for an Arduino is it has the capability of using shields in order to increase the functions that it has. You can actually put shields in order to add capabilities like having an Ethernet, or you can also have a Wi-Fi, or you can have more control over motors, cameras, graphic processing, radio transmission. In fact, the capabilities for an Arduino will become limitless the moment you start introducing shields. One other disadvantage that we have when you are using a Pi is that it does not have an analog to digital convert on board, which is something that an Arduino has. In terms of startup time, an Arduino does not need to wait to boot up an operating system. It has a very small delay, which is about a second, while it checks for a new program that has been uploaded, and then it will be running. Whereas if you are using a Raspberry Pi, it has an operating system, so it will take time to load the operating system. Then in terms of power consumption, an Arduino uses just 1/10 of the power that is required to run a Raspberry Pi. And for my final thoughts, choose an Arduino when you really want to learn electronics and the functions of components, or if you want to do simple projects and you don't have to use the network. Also choose Arduino when there is no software applications involved. An Arduino is great at controlling small devices like sensors, motors, and lights. That is why it is ideal for projects like light control, security alarm, simple robots, or opening and closing garage doors. Reading outside temperatures, humidity, and other prototyping projects before you do circuit boards would be ideal for an Arduino. The other thing that I would advocate to use Arduino is that it has a very good active online community. So it is easy to find potential projects and tutorials and support. Choose Raspberry Pi when the project that you want to do is complex and networking is involved. You must also choose Raspberry Pi when the project that you are doing is more of software application, like a server, or whether it's a VPN server or website, or when you want to drive complicated robots or performing multitasking, which is something that Arduino cannot do. Raspberry Pi is suitable for multimedia based projects where you can easily connect to a display or use audio. Although Raspberry Pi is a growing community where you can source projects and ideas, it does not match the community that is already in existence for an Arduino. One thing that I strongly recommend to anyone considering any community support development boards like the two that we are talking about today is to first spend time on the forums available for these boards. See how many people are using the boards, and then what best matches your interest. You also have to look at how active the forum is and whether people are getting useful response to their problems before deciding to buy any of the two boards. I use both boards for my projects, so I would recommend you to use both of them and enjoy yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys.